This is absolutely out of control. We have a government that doesn't seem to even begin to understand how to tackle this. Smashing the gangs, do me a favour. Let's talk to the Executive Director of Migration Watch, Mike Jones. Hello, Mike. Hang on. Mike is not coming through sound-wise.
Can you hear me?
Got you, Mike. Yeah, got you. Yes. I don't know if you just heard my tirade, but did you? And if so, did you agree?
Yes, I do agree. I mean, Labour has often been accused of not having a plan to tackle the Channel migrant crisis. I mean, one journalist recently described Sir Keir Starmer as a man without a plan, but I think that's unfair. Labour does have a plan. The problem is that the plan won't work. You know, it's a bit like the fake portable village made by Field Marshal Potemkin to impress Catherine II, or the Village of Peace in North Korea. You know, the villages are empty, they're husks, their purpose is purely optical. And it's the same with Labour's plan. It's there for optics and nothing more. I mean, these policies have been tried and tested at home and abroad, and the results have been very disappointing. I mean, as you say, Kevin, you know, if you want to smash the gangs, then you have to make their business model redundant. And how do you do that? Well, you deport their clients, because
you stop their clients by deporting them, by sending a message to their clients that once you get here, you'll be deported or sent to Rwanda. You can't stay. Then they'll stop coming. But Starmer and Cooper have nothing in place like that. Their policy remains, oh, well, if you do get here, and let's face it, it's pretty easy to get here. If you do get here, you're home and dry. We'll give you everything we got. We'll give you free accommodation, 4-star hotels, free food, 45 quid a week, free lawyers, free doctors, free dentists, everything we can give you. No wonder they keep coming. Do you think that Starmer and Cooper, and indeed the Cabinet, actually secretly just don't want to stop them coming?
That's a good question. I've thought about it myself. I mean, there are two possibilities here. Number one, they actually believe in their plan, which is quite worrying because it's not going to work. Or number two, they're doing the minimal sort of optical stuff, and they're going to rely on the European Union and other countries within the EU to do the dirty work. So they may be hoping that the numbers decline over time due to what goes on with Frontex and so on. But it's difficult to know. But personally, I think Starmer believes that by simply increasing resources, adding to the administration, having more bureaucracy, more intelligence officers, surveillance equipment and so on, then he will actually solve the problem. But, you know, he's in for a rude awakening. I mean, the Border Security Command, it was tried under Priti Patel. It was called the Clandestine Channel Threat Command. And it did exactly the same thing as what Labour wants to do. It provided, a joined up approach. It brought different departments together. What happened? The numbers went up. People continued to cross the channel. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a transnational phenomenon. And the gangs, they're nimble, they're agile. You can make life uncomfortable for them, but you can't smash them. You have to tackle their business model. You have to get rid of people. You have to detain and deport. That's the only way to solve this. But of course, Labour don't want to do that.
So you know that, Mike. I know that. Story out today in the EI paper saying that the Home Office officials know that. The Home Office have made it clear to Starmer and Cooper, smashing the gangs isn't going to work. It isn't going to solve the crisis. Martin Hewitt, the commander of the Border Security Command, on day one of his tenure, his 200 grand a year tenure, this was only about a month ago, because it took him a long time to find anyone who was prepared to do this poison chalice job. He said to them on day one, well, look, I can go out and look for the gangs, but this won't stop the crisis. You need a deterrent. You need to deter the migrants. I mean, why, after all that, civil servants, the leader of the Border Security Command, people like me, commentators, people who know something about this, who've been yelling from the rooftops, to Starmer and Cooper, no, you're going about this the wrong way. Why don't they listen? Why do they just plough on with this, road to nowhere?
Good question. I mean, the same thing happened with the BB Stockholm. Civil servants and various quangos warned the Tory government that the BB Stockholm and various other, alternative means of accommodation would end up costing more for the taxpayer than putting these illegal migrants in hotels. But the government just completely ignored them and they went on with it. But as it turned out, they did cost more money. It's the same with this. I think it boils down to ideology. The Labour Party does not want to reform or amend the Human Rights Act. They find the Rwanda plan morally objectionable. So basically what they're doing is they're putting all of their eggs into this administrative basket and hoping on a wing and a prayer that it's going to make some difference. But of course, it's not going to.
Yeah, and let's talk about the sheer numbers. I mean, the numbers coming across the channel now are spiralling in an alarming way. As I say, in the last 10 days, I'm just going to add this up because my maths are useless. I'm famous for making mistakes live on air due to my terrible arithmetic, so I'm using a calculator. Right, so in the last 10 days, this goes back to Thursday, October the 31st. So that's like last Thursday week. There has been just one day, which is not yesterday, but last Sunday week, where none came across, and pretty much every other day hundreds have come across. The total in 10 days, in the last 10 days, is 2,374, and still they come. Nice day today. I'll guarantee you quite a few came over again, and we have a government that's doing nothing. That, as you sort of suggest, Mike, are essentially delivering us a kind of performative policies, which are just something to be able to say to the TV. We're drones, £75 million worth of state-of-the-art equipment. The Border Security Command, I believe, started off with funding of 75 million. About 2 weeks ago, or last week, was it, that Starmer doubled that and gave them another 75 million to buy drones, state-of-the-art equipment, and to be able to send crack agents onto the continent to track down the evil people smuggling gangs. It was only after that, Mike, he mentioned, well, there is a slight problem. I do have to kind of renegotiate Brexit before I can send agents onto the continent. So even when he says, I'm going to smash the people smuggling gangs, we're going to send people onto the continent, he doesn't mention that slight nuance that he's going to have to do a deal with Macron and the EU to allow our people onto the continent. That deal has not been done. Therefore, the Border Security Command remains completely impotent.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, you need boots on the ground and you need very deep cooperation. And everyone within the EU and Turkey as well, they need to be singing from the same hymn sheet. Because it's going to be very difficult otherwise. For example, in 2021, Boris Johnson asked the French, if they'd allow British soldiers and police to patrol the French coastline, to prevent people from crossing. Mr. Johnson also proposed joint boat patrols and maritime operations, to stop illegals from entering British territory, and that would have worked. But how did the French respond? Well, the then French Prime Minister, Jean Castex, he basically said, no, that would be a violation of French sovereignty. So, unless you have boots on the ground and very deep cooperation, this is only going to make a difference at the margins.
Just doing more of my calculator-aided sums. Let's not forget, in terms of the cost of all this, each one of these migrants, these asylum seekers, as they mysteriously become once they get to our shores, they cost £40,000 a year each. They cost taxpayers £40,000 a year each. Probably quite a generous estimate, actually, in terms of it's probably a lot more. But anyway, if you take it 40 grand per year per migrant, the number of migrants that have come over in the last 10 days are going to cost us in the next year £94,960,000. Nearly £95 million, and that's just for the last 10 days. This is out of control, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, people often ask me, why did you support the Rwanda plan? It was very expensive, wasn't it? And I say, well, yeah, it was expensive, but you've got to zoom out. You've got to take a panoramic view of this. And the costs of illegal migration over the long term will dwarf anything that we would have spent on the Rwanda plan. I mean, the fact is you can't attach a price tag to border security because, number one, the British people want our borders controlled, our national security depends on it, and the hard-pressed taxpayer will be punished in the long term if you don't secure your borders.
Yeah, and my feeling about the Rwanda scheme, people always say, oh, the Rwanda scheme is very expensive. By the way, it mutated from what I think we spent, which was about £370 million, what with investment and various deals with Kigali. But it mutated once Yvette got into power, that we'd wasted 700 million on it. I'm not quite sure where she got that astronomical figure. But either way, if we wasted 700 million, that makes it even more impetuous and immature of Keir Starmer to axe that very expensive scheme on day one. And people say it was very expensive and it didn't work. How do you know it didn't work? We never tried it.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, the Rwanda plan wasn't operational. You had a few people who went to Kigali voluntarily and who, paid cash to do so. It was never operational. And the only thing that really worked for the Tories was their returns policy with Albania, because the high watermark figure for illegal channel crosses was 2022 because of the large numbers of people that came from that country. But once Sunak had the returns policy in place, the numbers did come down quite substantially. Obviously, they're still very high, but deporting people to their country of origin or to a third safe country like Rwanda is effective. It's sensible because no would-be illegal migrant is going to part with €6,000 if they know that when they arrive in Dover, they're going to be deported in 48 hours.
Yeah, it's called a deterrent. And it was, a lot of people, I can understand the reservations about it. I had reservations myself, but it was a deterrent. At least we had one. And Starmer flushed that straight down the drain day one. And ever since then, we haven't had one. And now we've got a Prime Minister and a Home Secretary who are blatantly, shamelessly pursuing a policy that they must know cannot work. If they don't know it cannot work, they must have cotton wool in their ears, because the commander of the Border Security Command, Martin Hewitt, has told them. Home Office officials are telling them. People like me have been yelling it from the rooftop, and people like you, Mike, and yet they carry on, as I say, down the road to nowhere. Extremely worrying. But good to talk to you, Mike. Always a pleasure.